So several months ago, we announced that we'd be publishing the game Meltwater, and that got a lot of people excited and curious. They wanted to know more about the game. And we told people a little bit about it, and we figured, well, since the game's coming out later this month, we should tell them more than a little. So this video is intended to tell you about the game and let you know if it's the kind of game that you should buy, that you'd be interested in. So this is a game set in the Cold War, in which the Cold War has gone hot. There has been a nuclear confrontation, and the entire world is covered in radiation, except for Antarctica. And that is where our story takes place. Everyone goes to Antarctica, including the US and USSR, who continue to fight each other. So let's take a look at the map, and I'll tell you more about the game. So here we have the game at setup. The red guys are the USSR, and the blue guys are the United States. And this is a game where the object is to totally exterminate the other side. So the blue side wins when all the red counters are off the map. The red side wins if all the blue counters are off the map. And you're trying to do this not only through military means, but also and primarily through forcing the enemy to starve and die in the wastes of Antarctica. And each turn has 3 phases. And the first phase is Starvation Phase. And that's kind of the most important phase, but because it makes more sense in the context of everything else, and because you skip it on your first turn, we're going to skip that for now. And we're going to skip ahead to the second of the 3 phases on your turn, which is the action phase. So on the action phase, you take actions. And those actions include marching, so it's moving into a hex. It includes transporting your stockpile, which gives you more supply from one friendly hex to another. You can threaten enemy units to try to force them to move out of a hex and move them into a hex where they might end up starving. You can press gang the neutral civilians, which are the white counters, to turn them into your own color. You can attack the enemy, and I'll get into the attack in just a second. And you can militarize, which takes all your actions and turns 1 or 2 of your counters, your civilian counters, into a soldier counter. Now, after the action phase comes the Doomsday Phase, and that really revolves around this Doomsday deck that we have over here. So there are 2 cards out at any given time. One card is the active card, and the other is the card for the next turn. So the active card is going to resolve during your Doomsday Phase when it's your turn. And in this case, we're going to look at these 2 black hexes, and that tells us that hexes D7 and F1 are going to get a radiation marker, which makes them dead hexes. They're not able to support any life at all. And any hexes adjacent to it are called dirty hexes, and those will support less life. Let me put this over in F1. We also get a civilian arriving, so in hex A3, and they arrive at the neutral hexes that feeds in more units into the game. That card's done, and we discard it, move that card up, flip over the next card, and then it's the next player's turn. Now, the start of your turn, except for your very first turn, is going to consist of the Starvation Phase. And this really is kind of the crucial phase in the game. And the way the Starvation Phase works is that you look at each of the hexes that have units for all sides, and you determine if any of them are overstacked. So each hex can support a certain number of units. The base is 2, so most hexes support 2 units. There are modifiers to this, however. So dead hexes support nothing. Dirty hexes, which again are those hexes adjacent to the dead hexes or adjacent to the coastline, have a -1 modifier. Ice hexes have a +1 modifier. So we have over here this ice shelf area. This one's going to support 3 units because it has 2 + 1, that makes it 3. And actually, if we have a friendly unit there, because it's adjacent to a friendly supply depot, friendly stockpile, it's going to support another unit, so 4 units total. But its general base support level is 3. It's 2 plus 1, and we have the plus 1 printed on the map. So on the map, we have printed the net modifier at the beginning of the game, what it's going to net out to at the start of the game. Now let's say we have a hex that is overstacked, and I'm going to create an example over here. So we're going to move some guys here, pretend we got this going on here. Okay, and we have that here. So this hex, we got 5 in there, why not? So this hex can support 2 units, and it has 5. So we need to resolve that hex, and we do that, 1 unit at a time. First, units are going to try to flee to a friendly hex that can support it. So here's a friendly hex that can support, let's get rid of that stockpile. Friendly hex that can support up to 2 units, has 1 unit there, so it can move 1 there. It fleed there. The second thing it's going to try to do is to, let's move that guy out of there, is to defect. So it's going to try to defect over to the Russian side. So it's going to move over here and turn itself into a Russian unit. It's going to learn to speak Russian. Okay. Now we have 3 other units. And let's just move that out of there so it's not there. Give me a better example here. The 3 other units, they can only support 2. It can't flee because this is maxed out. It can't defect because this is maxed out. It can't move to an empty hex. So in that case, the unit is just going to die. And that is how the Starvation Phase works. And the crux of the game is trying to maneuver your enemy so that they starve to death, which is brutal and terrible. But really is the idea behind the game. And as you're doing that, as each turn is progressing, there are more and more radiation markers going onto the board. Two every turn at least. If you do an attack, so let's say, let me show you how an attack works. We got 2 guys here, and this guy attacks that guy. They both die, and then the closest dirty hex to this hex gets a radiation marker. And so as the game progresses, the playable areas can get smaller and smaller and smaller and support less and less units, and they're going to die off faster and faster until one of the sides wins. So maybe that side only has 1 guy left and is surrounded, utterly surrounded by radiation. Well, they won. They're not going to enjoy their victory for much longer, but they won. And that, in a nutshell, is Meltwater and how it works. That should tell you if this is the kind of game for you. And we're really excited to be publishing this because it's a game with a point of view. It's a game that tackles this subject matter seriously, and yet also, I think, somewhat satirically. It's a very bleak game. But we're really excited about it, and I think it's a really great debut from first-time designer Erin Lee Escobedo. And that is Meltwater.